Welcome to your Daily 5 for Wednesday, January 10th, 2024. If you've listened to the show for a while, or if you've heard any of the podcasts that I've done with filmmaker Len Kabaczynski, you have likely heard the name Vinegar Syndrome come up a lot. Or, if you are a fan of genre film or underground film, you probably know that name. It is one of the big companies as far as finding and restoring old films, genre films, cult flicks, that type of thing. So when I saw that they were doing a release of a movie from 2023, I was interested, and I recognized the movie. It's called Divinity. I'd seen a couple of trailers for this, and it looked really weird and different. And so I was already planning to watch it, but then when I got an email from Vinegar Syndrome saying, or I saw a trailer for it, I think on YouTube, not an email, but it probably was in one of their newsletters, that they were releasing the disc for this, then I was more interested than I had been to begin with. I actually was reminded of it, and I thought, okay, if Vinegar Syndrome is involved in this, that must mean something. So I went and found it. It was $5 to rent on Amazon Prime Video. I went ahead and rented it, watched it, and it was a really interesting experience, one that I think is largely positive. Now, I should up front tell anybody, if you're coming into this, because based on the trailer, you can pretty much tell that it seems to be either a futuristic or some type of science fiction story that has to do with immortality. And that is, at a base level, true. But I will warn anybody who is thinking about watching this, do not come into this film expecting a deep, nuanced, layered story. The narrative, to my mind, is probably the least significant thing about this film. Not only in terms of what you get, but also, my hunch is, it was the least important thing to the writer and director of the film. This is clearly a style film. This is a movie that I think the director decided to write a string, like just enough of a story to be able to string all these shots that he wanted to get together. It feels a lot like something that I would expect to find as an in-between story or in a filler issue of something like Heavy Metal magazine. Something where they found somebody, let's say an artist who had a really interesting style and said, okay, you don't have enough of a story to really sustain half the magazine or whatever, but we'll give you 5 to 10 pages, draw whatever you want, just give it enough of a story that people can follow it, and we just really want to see your vision, your artistic vision in some kind of visual form. And that's what Divinity is. It is a very highly visually expressive film with the barest bones of a story. There is a story. It's not incoherent. You can follow it, but there are characters whose motives are unclear, whose origins are unclear, whose ultimate goals are unclear. It doesn't really matter, because I think you get the idea very quickly in this movie that you're in it for what you're looking at. You don't really need to engage your brain all that much. You won't see much that really surprises you in the story department. Visually, I think there's a lot to appreciate in it. It's all in black and white. It has some really beautiful shots. There's actually a whole section that, without giving anything away, because I'll talk about it on Friday, I think some reviewers got the impression that the special effects were bad because they didn't understand what was actually going on. And that to me is very funny, but also I think it kind of indicates why this is probably for a limited audience. There is essentially a stop motion sequence. And I think there are people who just thought that the special effects were so poor that the imagery was stuttering. And that's not what's going on. It is intentionally done in a specific way. But the fact that some people thought that tells me, okay, this is clearly not a general release. I was thinking of things like some of David Lynch's experimental films or Phil Tippett's Mad God movie where, okay, this is not really a movie where the story is paramount. It's there is a story there. There's more of a story than Mad God, certainly, but it is not really what's important. What's important is this is an atmospheric film. This is a visual film. This is where somebody wants to have shots and scenes and have you experience them, and that's what matters. So that should tell you right away whether this is a movie for you. If it is, if this sounds at all interesting, or the films, like I said, Lynch's experimental shorts, or Phil Tippett's Mad God, if that's your type of thing, this is well worth the $5. I don't know if I'd say go out and buy it necessarily, but you should at least rent it and watch it, because I've had the imagery in my head for a few days now, and that's generally at least a good sign that I watched something worth watching. So again, it's called Divinity from 2023, easily rentable in many places, and if you're in for this type of thing, you're going to have a good time. Later.